Hello and welcome to LevelUP. This is our Python series where Angus is going to teach you the basics of coding in Python. Enjoy!
Alright everyone, welcome back to another tutorial in our Intro to Python series, and today we're going to start looking at some practical applications of lists, so how we can use lists in more context rather than just theory based. So my goal for this tutorial here today is we're going to create like a high score sort of project, and what this should do, we'll cover a few different things here, and each of them should give you a bit of a springboard where you can go off and try and experiment deeper with them and add your own flair to the project and kind of learn in your own way from there. But the first thing we're going to do, I'll talk about what we're going to do as we go through it, but the first thing we need to do is create a list of high scores. And you know, we're going to create a list first, so if you just type along with me, we're going to create a list called high scores, so high scores. So of course we've created a variable called high scores, and then we use equal sign, say we're going to give it the value, and then square brackets. And remember, when we put square brackets, this says we're going to create a list. So if we just run this, you know, nothing happens. This has created an empty list, and I'm just going to fill it with some values here. You can do it as well, just fill it with whatever values you want. I'm just going to put some random values in here. Really doesn't matter. Oops, it helps if I put it inside the list. It really doesn't matter what you put in here. Experiment with different ones and see what happens. I'll just put 150 and then maybe 32. You know, a wide range of numbers. It doesn't matter what order you put them in, because they're all their own little unique variables inside one bigger variable here. So I'm just going to print this and we'll just see it. So if we print high scores, you know, we've created it. And as we expect, we see it displayed exactly as we've created it here. Awesome. So if we want to, I was thinking for this project we could ask the user for their score, and then we can check it against previous high scores from other players. So if we want to ask the user for an input, remember we're going to first of all create an can't speak today. We're going to create another variable called, what should we call this? User score. User score equals, and we'll do int, because remember we're getting a number, so we need to convert our input to an integer, so we use the int function. And inside of our brackets we get an input by typing input, open brackets, and then we automatically get that close bracket there, but make sure you have two close brackets, one for the integer, one for the input, and the message will say, what is your score? And with this, if we now print it, we will print user score, run this, we see what is your score, and I'll type 50, and you know, we get 50 as we expect. That's what we've done this at the start of the tutorial, we get what that does. Cool. I'm beginning to realise now as we type out this project that maybe high scores isn't the best name for this array, so we'll just call it scores. These are a whole bunch of scores, and we'll implement a high scores function later. We'll just add some more context to this. That's just some thinking is what we're going to do as we go along here. So I'll just delete this line here, and what we can actually do is we can add user score to the end of scores array. Remember, if we just do scores dot append, so we're calling the append function of the list, and this just adds it to the end, and we'll just do user score. And you know, I'll print it before. We can print scores here, and then I'll print scores after we've added it. If we hit run, you know, what is your score? I will type in 50 again. So the first time we print it, you know, we get we create the filled list now. Sorry, so we've got our list here with all these values. We ask the user for their score, and then we print the scores array, which you know is what we created the first time. It's just from 10 to 99. We then add the user input, which is stored in this variable. We do scores.append, we add it to the list, and then we print scores again, and we can see that 50, which is what I typed in, is added to the end of the list. And that's what that .append function there does. So that's really cool. What we can actually do is I'm going to show you a different type of fixed loop. So we looked, last time we did for loops. You'll be familiar with this. We type for I in range len of scores, and I'll just do that and type pass. I'm just typing pass here. As you notice, when we don't have pass, we get red squiggly lines because Python, when it sees a colon like this, it's looking for code, but there's nothing there, so it freaks out. So I just type pass, and it just it ignores it. This literally does nothing. That's what pass. That's the function of pass. It does nothing. So we just don't get red squiggly lines. Really doesn't matter. Just that's there. So you know, we're creating a variable which stores the iteration of the loop we're on. Remember, we go from 0 to 1 to 2 and so on and so on. So instead, I'm actually going to type a new for loop. We'll type for score in scores, and this is what's called a for each loop. And what this does is this, instead of storing the iteration of the loop we're on, this will store the item of the array. So scores here, you know, we've got 10, 20, 15, 100. These are all items in our list. This is the 0th item, this is the first item. So here, this would go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And instead, we're creating this variable called score. And every time this goes through the loop, score the first loop will equal 10, because we're getting the 0th item of the list. Then we'll get 20, and we'll get 100. So this is good if we don't actually need to store the index, if we're only just using the one list. This is good. So I'll just delete this quickly. Or no, I'll comment it out. You know, so we still have the code there. This is one good use of comments. If you remember, we used them in the last video. And I'll just print score just to prove, just to show you what I'm talking about. So I'll type in a new score, remember 50. And here we go. So it's iterating over each item in our scores list. We start with 10, you know, we've got 10 all the way through to 99, which is here, and then remember we added 50 with our .append function to the end, like that. And we can call this anything, because this score, this is technically just a variable that's created with each iteration of loop, so we could call it S, and you can see I'll just run it again. And you know, same thing happens because we can call this within reason anything. I'll just call it score because we want to provide some context and write some understandable code. All right. So quickly before, I'm just going to move this. So I'm just going to cut this line here, the append function, and I'm just going to put it down the bottom of our program here. What we're going to do is, if this is a list of user scores that they've generated from, say, playing a game, we can check if they have a high score, if what their new score is higher than the highest score here. So we'll go into what I mean by this, but we have to find the highest value in this list. So what we can do, we'll create a variable, and Python makes this really easy for us. So we can say high score. So make sure you've changed this variable name up here from high scores to scores. Sorry, that was my mistake. I didn't fully think through what we're going to do in this tutorial, but there we go. So high score, we're creating a variable called high score. We'll say equals, give it the value, and then Python has an inbuilt function called max. And what this does is it finds the highest value in a list like this, filled with integers. So if we just type max, open brackets, and then inside here we'll pass it the scores list. So yep, this will get passed, this value here will get passed in here, and then this function will find the maximum value in here, which we would expect to be 150. So I'll just do that, I'll print that now. So we'll do print, and then if we do high score, and then plus. And remember, if we're going to join strings together, we have to convert it to a string so they're all the same type, because we can't add text and numbers together. They both have to be the same type, and we'll convert our high score to a string. So if we print this, whoops, no, don't print high score, print high score, just add some context here. So we'll print a message saying high score plus the string, well, the high score convert to string. So if we run this, we see high score is 150 like we expected, because that's what's returned from this max function. And then we do our for each loop, which is another type of fixed loop. That's all that is, which is down here. And then we append at the end, but we don't see that at the end. We don't see 50 on the end of this list because the append function is called at the end of the program. Brilliant. So now what we can do is actually check. I'm just going to comment this out. This tutorial is a bit here and there, so if you just comment out your codes, and when you come back to play around with things, you know, just use all different manners of what we've done in this tutorial to create some cool projects of your own. So I'm just going to comment this out as well at the bottom here. Oops, not there, down here. And then we can check. So if user score is greater than high score, you know, we're creating an if statement here, a condition here. So if this is true, if our user enters a new score that's higher than all of these scores that they previously have, we can print, you know, a nice message saying, congratulations, you have a new high score. And then we can even add some context of, and then remember we can join strings together by doing str, which converts a string, and we can print user score, and that'll print a nice message. So I'll run that quickly. What is your score? So if I say 50, like I've been putting, you know, we see the first one, our high score, which is previously 150. You know, that's yeah, but we don't. This condition isn't true. You know, user score is 50. Isn't greater than high score, which is 150, so this if statement doesn't run. But if I run this again and say type in 200, you see the high score statement, which we expected. This is the one that's outside of our if statement. And then congratulations, you have a new high score of 200, which means, you know, user score, which is 200, is greater than the high score. So we add it to the string, not add it to the string, sorry, we print this message saying congratulations, and then give context there. Awesome. We could also then throw an else statement on this, and we could say print, sorry, you don't have a new high score. Sad face. Whoops. Yep, go. That's all right. Just be careful when you're using quotation marks and brackets inside of strings. You should always have an open quotation mark and a closed quotation mark at the end of your string that you're creating. You might get errors sometimes. Say if we put like another quotation mark here, this is now getting an error because it's the string. This is what Python sees as a string, not all this out here. So just be careful with that. You might see an error once in a while like that. Now if we run that again, and now if we type 50, we see, sorry, you don't have a high score because 50 is less than 150. So there we go. We've covered quite a few things here. We didn't really create one big project, but I'll leave that to you. You know, I've showed you how to do a few things with this sort of idea, and you know, using some loops, using some if statements, using some of the functions that we've showed. You know, finding max, using the append, getting inputs and whatnot, creating lists. Try creating multiple lists. You know, do whatever your imagination really takes you. Try doing what you want, code what you want, and you know, I feel that's the best way to learn, if you take what we've learned and you put it into practice here. So feel free to go back over previous tutorials in this series and revisit some concepts if you don't feel as comfortable in them. and then apply them to this this code that you're going to write, and that will really start developing your understanding of Python, and you'll find little you'll better understand what we've been learning over these past few tutorials. So have a go at that, and then come back in the next tutorial and we'll learn some new things. So thanks for watching. Bye.
That's it for this video. Check out our channels for some more tutorials from Angus on Python. Join us next time. Bye.